Hello, welcome back to Beneficiary Live Noding. In this episode, we're gonna take a look at Animation Nodes version 2.1 official, and we're gonna play around with just the basics. So let's get started. So Animation Nodes, when you use Animation Nodes for the first time, you get a lot of nodes dealing with numbers, vectors, matrices. There's a lot of special nodes like text, and there's logic like booleans. But anyways, if you really just want to play with the basics, animations is where you want to start. Especially this animate float, vector matrix, and then color, and then rotation Euler or rotation quaternion. Animate floats is probably a really good place to start. Okay, so you can basically use numbers, values to control anything in Blender. So that's kind of big. And let's delete everything. Let's actually use this. So we have this animate float, but it's not gonna be doing anything unless we specify a value like start and end. This is like two floating value that we're gonna have as output. If we use a viewer, we can see result, but we need to plug in time info or frame numbers into time. Now we have start and value, and if we play back using spacebar, you can see the value is changing. So within 20 frames of durations, the value will go from 0 to 10. So that should be pretty basic and easy to understand. You can start this maybe at frame 20 and end at frame 50. Or actually, this is the value. It's gonna always start at frame 0, but the value will go from 20 to 50. So let's get back to 0 and 0 to 10. Let's try if we have a plane in a 3D scene and we want to control the solidify. So it's growing down like that. Maybe I'm just gonna rotate it 180 degrees. So now it grows up. So it's solidify. And we want to animate this thickness. You can do this usually using normal keyframe. Hit I mean in Blender, hit I is like keyframing, and you have the beginning and the end value. Or you can use Python or drivers, but in this case we are using animation nodes. How do we connect those two? So the easiest is to use expression. Actually, expression is it's almost like a drivers. We want to get this data. If we right click and copy data path, we're gonna get this modifier data in relation to these objects. So that will actually work, but in this case we want to get the proper expression directly into this guy. So command option shift C, I believe, and then paste it here. Will give you that exactly. So this will directly connect to this object, plane objects, and modifier solidify, and we can control it using animation nodes. Okay, so we need to specify the correct variable. So we say we have successfully controlled the thickness of this object using animation nodes. So that's the start and end value. This is the durations, and this is the animations interpolations. So you can make it like kind of like bouncing. For example, at any time here you can offset or delay the animations. For example, let's go back to animations. So we have time info, which is the frame, delay, and repeat. Delay is like the offset. You can offset it by any value. So let's offset it 20 frames. So it's gonna wait 20 seconds or 20 frames, and then the animation will kick. So yeah, play around with this, but normally stick with linear for the time being. So you have these animations. Pretty cool, pretty basic and easy. Let's save this. Actually, this is a super basic. basic addon. So what else can we do here? We can take a look at animations. We have Animate Vector. Okay, Animate Vector sounds really scary, but it's actually very, very similar to this. So let's do this time frame. So let's say we want to animate this guy and moving it left to the right, for example. This is the vector value. This is 0, 0, 0 position. This is 0, 0, 0 and position. We want to move it maybe 10 units to the side. And we want to control our objects, right? So you can use object transform output. So this is the nodes that you're going to be using quite often. So select our objects. Okay, it seems to be moving already. So it seems to be like it's doing that now. Very nice. So it's like two animations at the same time overlapping, and we have our animations. And maybe we can do something with the frame, right? You might notice there's a repeat. So repeat is really, really handy. It's gonna repeat the animations. It's gonna loop. By default, it's gonna loop. Say if our duration is 20, it's gonna loop exactly every 20 frames. If we specify 60, it's gonna pause and hold before it continues. Sometimes with this, I mean, even with just object transform output and you're animating scale or the position or the rotation, is probably enough for the beginner, like for beginning procedural animations. So you are really controlling everything using frame. Oh, there's ping pong. Okay, ping pong is really cool. Let's make this 20 frames. So it's gonna ping pong between two values. You can see it goes from 0 to 10, go back to 0 to 10. So ping pong can be super handy. What else can we have here? Animate Matrix. Okay, Matrix slightly more complicated if you use compose matrix. This is basically the whole thing, the whole transform animations. So we can use the same frame input that's being ping pong, and you can try using Suzanne. So whatever already in the 3D scenes, we can control using animation nodes. So get our Suzanne matrix, and let's animate Suzanne. So by default, it's doing nothing because we didn't make any changes. We can scale Suzanne up and down. Again, we have ping pong, and we have Suzanne. It's all animating together with our plane that's solidified. You can do the same with the rotations as well. Let's make Suzanne doing this. Okay, if everything moving at the same time, it's not so interesting. It would be nice to have Suzanne just doing kind of overlapping actions. Currently, it's doing that, looking up, looking down, looking front at the front. So that's not very interesting, but you can always do this, I believe. Oh, yeah. The easiest way, if there's an easier way, is actually when you start looking into other things like this. You want to mix the matrix. So matrix list and the vector that you can animate on and off. Let's try this. I have not done this. So compose matrix, create matrix list. So maybe we want to have a couple of matrices that we can plug here, and we can control Suzanne matrices now using this. So we can animate Suzanne. We can actually have multiple. So let's say we want to have Suzanne rotating in X. Like that, 30 degrees. And we want Suzanne to animate the other way around. And we can control it using this vector. Okay, the scaling also maybe stay at 1, and then this is supposed to be minus 30 degrees. So we can animate this. We can animate Suzanne like this using just the vector. For the vector, we can control this using frame maybe, or sine wave. Let's see. Okay, we can apparently do that as well. So that's super handy. That's almost like, it's actually kind of like a looping. So we can control that using our time. But we want to multiply that. Yeah, so there's a lot of possibilities here, especially with the matrix here. We can actually do this. So not just 2 value, it's multiple value. So that's basically pretty much it, except that we have a couple of things that we haven't used, such as animate color or Euler quaternion. That's basically rotations. Animate color. So how do we change the color? So let's see. We're starting to get a lot of nodes. Let's animate color maybe between red and blue. Duration, keep it at 20. Time, repeat. Okay, we have this repeat time that we can use here. So where should we plug this into? The easiest is to plug into cycles material. Cycles material output will work with materials, EV material as well. So any materials basically. So by default, we're gonna have like the normal principles, etc. with the shader. So let's frame this. We can select the principal node, principal BSDF node, and plug in this data, which is the color. And if we switch to different render engine, you can see it's animating. So with EV, it's gonna be real time. With cycles, actually, you need to do other things, maybe like baking the animations beforehand. But yeah, so that's basically it in a nutshell. So if we actually make this smaller and this one's bigger, you can see Suzanne's going a little bit crazy. It's basically cycling through these 3 different matrix transformations. So all those should be the basics. So you know you can deal with value, whether it's coming from frame numbers. Frame is actually always good to start with, because everything can be controlled using time frame. But in the future, maybe you generate your own value. So instead of using frame, perhaps you want to use like random color, random number, random Euler. Say you want to wiggle it, for example. That's actually another thing. When it comes to wiggle, there's this useful vector wiggle, for example. So this is even if you're just starting, you probably want to do this vector wiggle. So these objects, we can control using vector. So objects goes in, this is the vector, we need compose matrix, this is wiggle, goes into the matrix. Now Suzanne is also wiggling. So animation node is really cool, probably the easiest procedural animation nodes in any 3D package. Well, some might think, okay, Houdini or Cinema 4D, but animation node is really easy to understand. And whenever you're done with it, you can always bake it. So baking it is from here. Oops. Where's the bake? Overview. Bake to keyframe. Let's baking it all the way 250 frames. Delete. See? Delete all the nodes and still have the animations. And you can use graph editor to look at the graph. This is procedural. Okay, time controlling all kind of basic animation values in animation nodes. So hopefully this is useful and easy to understand. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.